Hi, thanks for joining me today. Today's project is going to be an alcohol ink on photo paper. I use Kirkland brand, which is the one I have there, piece, and it's going to be 8.5 by 11 sheet. And I'm going to use these Sizzix grid notes. I won't be able to see the grid through the paper, but it's a double-sided tacky sheet by Sizzix. Which I just took the protectors off of, and I adhered that to my Lazy Susan, which has also been protected with some press and seal. And on goes my sheet of glossy paper, and you'll notice there that the first side was very shiny, which you don't want. For this particular project, I chose the matte side. I've got alcohol blending solution. I've got alcohol ink blending tool by Tim Holtz, which is this cotton pad on it. Mine's not super clean, but it won't make a difference. It'll still work very well. A mini mister with alcohol in it, which I don't use in this case, but could be, and I'll show you future tutorials using that. Mushroom alcohol ink, aquamarine alcohol ink. I chose some Sublime, which is the pearl ink, and also salmon, which is a very light pink. So I was trying to get sort of a foresty but also flowery look to this particular background. I wanted something fairly light, so you'll see white showing through as well. So I start with that blending tool, which has got, you could use a clean cloth on it, there's no doubt. I reuse mine, and I put a few dots of the mushroom and the aquamarine alcohol ink on it, and I'll pull up some of the blending solution and put a few drops. And the blending solution really is an extender which allows a longer drying time for the alcohol ink. Otherwise it dries very, very quickly, and this just allows us to put down this alcohol ink and get some life out of it before it dries, although we can always revive it. But in this instance, what I'm doing is I'm sort of twisting that, dropping the applicator tool down, twisting it on the paper, and it's leaving streaks of the mushroom and the aquamarine. And that's because I really want to have some of the background look more swirly and sort of free-form, organic, if you will. And then you'll see over top, as I start to layer this piece, there's going to be some dots. Bubbles, I call them, which I create with that blending tool. So I did pick up the green, and then I thought first, I think I'm going to use salmon. And so salmon is a very, very light color, so you can see I put quite a bit of that. And just a word to the wise, you might, with light colors, choose to put them down first, and then you can use darker colors to fill in space, but I decided to be very avant-garde. And so down goes the salmon, and I put some of the alcohol blending solution, and as I start dabbling that on, I realized, well, gee, I'm not really going to be able to see it very well because it's really light. So I chose a darker pink. It's not super dark, but this one's called Flamingo, and it's a really beautiful color. And I thought, okay, well, I will try the flamingo and see if it gives me the effect that I'm looking for. And I gave salmon another chance and plunked on a few more drops. And again, I'm using probably more of these two light pink colors than the other one. I might not have had to do that if I had started with the lighter pinks, or I could start with any light color and then drop in the darker colors around them. So I'm not trying to compete. But as you'll see, in my view anyway, and I hope you see the same, as I start pouncing this tool and creating bubbles over top, those bubbles have got some pretty pronounced pink. And the pink is not turning into a brown, as it sometimes does when it's mixed, especially with yellow tones like mushroom and so on. So I'm pretty pleased with that, and I pick up the aquamarine again, and I decide to go to town with the aquamarine because I quite like that color, and it's been lost a little bit in that first swirly part because it blended with the mushroom and made more of a green color. So I want the aquamarine to kind of stand out, and what I'm going to do is I'm pouncing the brush more than I'm twisting it, but there's a twisting motion, and all I can say is experiment and see what you like and how this tool feels comfortable to you, and in terms of not just your handling of it, but what it does and what you can make it do. What I've learned about the pouncing is, for me, is that the lighter the pounce, the smaller the bubble, and the heavier the pounce, the larger the bubble. So as I'm moving along and just sort of eyeballing where I want things to be, colors, textures, so on, and I add a bit more flamingo because I really do love that pink against these greens and blues. It's pretty spectacular. And so I'm dropping it in, and at the same time I'm looking at the whole scene on this background, and again keeping in mind that my plan here is to piece this background up and likely into 4 cards, which is what I ended up doing, and what I most often do with these backgrounds, although they can certainly be used for other projects, larger, smaller. You might be able to get more cards out of them. You might be able to get, you know, 1 or 2 backgrounds for bigger or rather larger multimedia projects, for example. But in this case, what I'm doing is just going along, doing my pouncing, enjoying those little bubbles that are coming up and all the different mixes of colors, because of course there is some mixture of the colors and they tend to go into the sort of purples, and just it's quite beautiful. And for me, that was the stopping point. That was it. I apologize for the reflection. The light overhead, just even on a matte side, does cause a bit of reflection there. Ordinarily, I'd have stopped the video here and just shown you, see, there it is. And I thought I had stopped the video process, and I had not. But what I wanted to do is just show you as I remove the Sizzix grid, that sticky grid paper. I take that off the back fairly easily of the piece that I've just done. And that piece would be dry, by the way. It's generally, because I didn't use a whole heck of a lot of ink, and I'm pouncing it around, it dries very, very quickly. So I put it off to one side. I brought back the 2 protective sheets that I had taken off of this grid paper, and just to show you how incredibly klutzy I can be sometimes. It's kind of funny watching myself, but it's not klutzy really, but I used the wrong side, so it wasn't sticking, it wasn't staying intact, that protective sheet. And so I'm just flipping it over and bringing back the other one. So if you use this repeatedly, because they are not cheap. I won't say they're super expensive, but you do want to be able to use them over and over again, as I do with these. That I think would be the best bet. So I'm going to leave you with the 4 cards that I created from this background. It gives you a much closer view of the background itself. All 4 of them are similar in theme in that they all include Tim Holtz paper dolls or baseboard dolls, or the thicker versions, as well as his pretty chuckle-worthy or at least mindful sentiments. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks again for joining me today.